Welcome back, everybody. I'm bored. COVID made me bored, and today I'm playing Pandemic Hot Zone North America. Pandemic Hot Zone, although I think there's two or maybe a few Hot Zone sub-themes, is based on the very popular Pandemic series published by Z-Man Games. It is basically not a dumbed down version, but a simplified version of Pandemic. Pandemic, I believe, I've never played Pandemic, the original, and there's two editions of it, a more recent edition, a second edition, and I think that covers the whole world in terms of a global pandemic. Hot Zone North America is a hot zone. It's a specifically for North America, so you're only dealing with North American cities. You're not worried about the rest of the global efforts. I believe there is a Hot Zone Europe or European, I'm not sure, but I think that was one that came after this. So we clearly got ourselves into a pandemic, and ironic as it is, I thought, hey, this game was popular even before a pandemic happened, based on, I'm sure, the experience of previous pandemics that the world has gone through. So I thought, sure, why not? I didn't want to invest a substantial amount getting the full Pandemic board game. The idea was interesting. I don't know how much I would like it. And I actually thought it'd be something different, a little bit of cooperative strategy. Definitely this is a purely cooperative game. You win or you lose together as a team. It plays up to 4 people, I think. Is it 4 people? Yeah, up to 4 players. And each player is a specific role, has a specific ability, and working together with your abilities, managing the diseases in multiple locations, trying to figure out how to best utilize the cards that you have. There's going to be a lot of open communication, and you're managing those outbreaks, trying to keep the outbreaks from happening, and at the same time discovering a cure for your diseases. So I thought that idea was really interesting. But like I said, I didn't want to spend over $50, $60 on the full game. And this was a lot more portable, easy to take with me if I ever get out of here. And the rule set was fairly straightforward to teach. There's a couple intricacies that you sort of have to keep in mind, especially when it comes to traveling, when you're moving from location to location. I found that a little bit more difficult at the beginning just to remember what the rules were. But aside from that, it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to go through that today, and we'll take a look at some of the components. Here is the player board showing North America. And we've got, I'm not exactly sure how many cities here. We got at least maybe 20 cities or so. And it's scattered throughout. You'll see that there are lines that connect cities to each other, but not to every city. So on average, each city has 2 to 3 connection points, and this outlines your travel path or your ability for travel path between cities, and also represents how outbreaks can happen and the path that the outbreak follows. Obviously, connected cities, when they are connected, they have a higher chance of infecting their neighboring cities than they would for a city that's not even linked or close by to them. You will have 4 character cards. There is a solo variant, I think, published on Z-Man's website, where you control, except for, I think, the researcher. They actually ask you to remove the researcher. You control 3 characters with 1 set of a hand of cards, and I think you have sort of a reserve set to choose from as well. I'm not doing that today. I'm going to be playing as if I'm 2 players. I find that a bit more straightforward and I have a bit more flexibility in my choices. So I'm going to choose the generalist and the medic. Each character that you have has a special ability. We have a dispatcher who has special actions that he can use. We have a researcher, which has a special action. Give a city card from your hand to another player in your city. The card does not need to match your city. We've got a generalist who can do up to 5 actions per turn. Your default average or default action per player is 4. And the medic, who has, when you do treat a disease action, remove the cubes of one color, remove all the cubes of one color, at any time remove all the cubes of cured disease in your city for free. So he's pretty useful. And the generalist, sure, why not? They have pawns to represent their characters in their character color. So the 4 pawns that I have in the different colors, I'm going to just choose for my generalist and my medic. Sorry, my medic is orange. And they all start in Atlanta. Atlanta is where the CDC is, your home base. When you're setting up, there will be 3 diseases. I think Pandemic, the full game, has 4 or 5 diseases. So again, this is sort of a subset version of it. And they've provided color cubes. Each cube represents the disease in a particular city. The quality is it's plastic. It's cute. And they also have the matching tokens here for when you do cure the disease. And once you have discovered a cure, you would take its matching little vial and place it on the board to indicate that you have successfully found the cure for this disease. And as I go through the gameplay, you'll see what that means once you've discovered a cure. So I'm going to place these off to the side. And if I do manage to cure, then hopefully I'll be able to cure all. And you can give them whatever name you want. You can give it SARS, COVID, I don't know what else is a disease out there. Name your other disease. So we've got a few to tackle on. And you will have your area for your infection deck. The infection deck is basically the list of all the cities on the board. And this will dictate, as you're playing, which cities get infected. And there is also the possibility of epidemics to happen. And I'll show you what that means in just a minute. So you shuffle it. Those are your cities. You'll be drawing them out and infecting cities. You have an infection rate, starting with the lowest 2, 2, 3, and 4. And you have a little marker token, biohazard, and you start at 2. So the meaning of this is when the infection rate increases as a result of an epidemic, on the turn where, or the phase where you draw infection cards, you will be drawing the number of cards or the number of cities to infect based on the number here on the infection rate. And I believe when you are doing the infection, you are placing, I think you're placing 3 cubes. Yes, you are placing 3 cubes on the city that has an infection. So at any given time, every city can have at most 3 cubes of one type of disease. So of the 3 colors, you can only have a maximum of 3 blue cubes, and in Seattle, say for example, a maximum of 3 yellow cubes in Seattle, and a maximum of 3 red cubes in Seattle. At any time, if you need to place cubes of a particular color at a city which has maxed out, you have now created an outbreak. And the outbreak means that you will be infecting the neighboring cities that have a connection line to that city that's currently in an outbreak. So you'd be placing the number of cubes that you can't place on that city to a neighboring city, to every neighboring city. It'd be 1 cube. And then on this side, you have the outbreak track. Every time you have an outbreak, so when that happens and you have an outbreak, you need to move your outbreak track forward. So in terms of the infection rate, it maxes out at 4. And there are only 3 cards in the deck that will create an infection increase or an infection outbreak. Sorry, not infection outbreak, an infection epidemic. And in terms of outbreaks, you can have any number of outbreaks, and you can actually, you'll see it's possible to have a chain of events which creates multiple outbreaks from just one action. But once you hit 4, the fourth outbreak, you lose the game. So in terms of losing the game, that is one condition in which you lose the game. The other condition is you have your player deck or your player cards, and these are cards which also represent cities, and they are color-coded. And the object is to, as you draw cards every turn, you'll be drawing 2 cards, and there's a little reference here, which is on your player turn, you'd be doing 4 actions. Then after your 4 actions are done, you draw 2 player cards from the deck, which are these 2. And then you would draw infection cards from the infection deck to infect additional cities. So when you're drawing cards, you're going to see that I have the different cities with their name and color on it. In order to cure a disease of a particular color, you need to have 4 cards of cities with the same color. So here, Denver, Phoenix, Calgary, and Dallas. If I have that in my hand, and I'm able to get myself back to Atlanta, as one action, I can submit my samples and discard them, and I would cure that disease of that color right here. There's a number indicated in the bottom of these vial markers or vial slots, indicating that you need to submit 4 red samples of the disease to cure that disease. So there's going to be a bit of hand management in terms of the cards that you can play, the cards that you want to keep, and how you can move and try to collect your samples to bring them back to Atlanta. These player cards of cities are multi-purpose. Not only would you collect them to gain samples so that you can bring them back to Atlanta and cure the disease, but they also represent a way to travel along the map. So, for example, if you were in, say, Atlanta, and I believe if you wanted to fly to Toronto, you can discard the card to fly to Toronto. That is a chartered flight. I believe that's what they call it. And a chartered flight allows you to discard the card in your hand to go to the city. Sorry, that's a direct flight. Sorry, a direct flight. So from Atlanta, I discard Toronto. It's a direct flight to Toronto, and that gets me to move. During my actions, I can also move without having discarded a card, but I can only move along any of the connected lines to a connected city, and that counts as one action. I'm going to go through the different actions in just a second. And if you were in Toronto and you had the Toronto card, you can then discard Toronto, and now it's called the chartered flight, which you can go to any city. So there is sort of a key difference between discarding the card when you're not in the city of the card versus discarding the card when you are in the city. So I'll just quickly, it makes more sense if I went through the actions. You've got a reference card for all the players of the actions that you can take, and there are 6 actions in total. The first action that you can do is if you're in a city and it has some diseases, you can treat 1 disease cube from your city. So if I'm in Dallas and I wanted to take an action to treat this cube, and I would do it because I want to manage the number of cubes in the city. I don't want to create outbreaks. So I could cure it and I'd put it back into the pool. One other losing condition is if at any point one of your disease pools is empty and you can no longer draw to infect, you automatically lose. The other option when you're treating is if I had cured the disease of that color and I had, say, 2 diseases in Dallas that are red. If I've already discovered the cure, but I still have a few more diseases to cure, we're not done yet. On my single action, when I remove that color of a cured disease, I can remove all the cubes from that city in one shot. It only takes 1 action, as opposed to if I didn't cure this red disease, I'd have to take 2 actions to clear these 2 cubes. So that's one bonus to discovering a cure for the disease. The other option that you have, another action that you have, is to share knowledge, which is if you are in, let's say I'm in Atlanta with my medic, I can share knowledge. I can give, or I can take a city card matching your city from the player in your city. So if I'm in here and the medic has Atlanta and I want Atlanta, I can take Atlanta from him. But if he has, say, Washington and I want Washington, I can't. I need to be in Washington with him in order to take it or give it to him. So it counts as an action to give or to take a card. The other action you can do is once you've collected 4 city cards of the same color and you are in Atlanta, you can submit those samples to cure the disease. The other action is you can move to a connected city, which I was explaining before. Any of the connected lines to the city that you're in, you can take one action to move one city. So if I want to do my 4 actions to move to Toronto or Montreal, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be my 4 actions. As I was showing before, you can discard a city card to move directly to that city. So I could discard Toronto, move directly to Toronto, or if I'm in Toronto and I discard Toronto, I can do a chartered flight to anywhere. So Guadalajara, if I need to. So those are your 6 actions. You can have your reference beside you for the players. When you're setting up the player cards, there are 3 epidemic cards that you need to include. And this is where it provides the instruction to increase the infection rate marker, which will be up here. You would draw from the bottom of the infection deck and then place 3 cubes on whatever city shows up. Then you would discard that card. Then you would intensify. You would shuffle the cards in the discard pile and put them back in the infection deck. So because for the cards in here, I believe it's 1 card per city, by having an epidemic, you are potentially reshuffling cards and creating the high likelihood of an outbreak. So when you're stacking the player deck, obviously it would be terrible if you had 3 epidemic cards in a row. So you're to take the stack of player cards, separate them into roughly 3 equal decks. And you would take one of the epidemic cards and you would shuffle it in to each of those 3 sub-decks and then combine the decks together to form your main deck. So this pretty much prevents the chance of getting 2 epidemic cards or 3 epidemic cards back to back to back, and that would suck. As soon as you reveal an epidemic card, when you draw your cards, you need to resolve the epidemic first before continuing play. So I'll just do this a quick shuffle. Take the epidemic card, place it in here. There is also an option to increase the difficulty of the game, and they are dictated by crisis cards. And you can add the crisis cards into the deck, and these crisis cards usually provide a crisis, something that creates a little bit more difficulty, a little bit more challenge. So for example, resolve the draw infection card step twice this turn. So that can create a problem. This one automatically does a draw the bottom card from the infection deck and place 3 matching cubes on that city, discard that card. So that can definitely, if you add these crisis cards, I think in the rulebook you can add, depending on the number of players and depending on the difficulty, you can add the number of crisis cards you want to make it more challenging. So I'm going to combine the 3 decks that I have into 1 player deck. We'd be starting off, each player is given 2 cards, or sorry, if it's a 2-player game, each person is given 3 cards. If you are playing with more than 2 players, you'd be giving them 2 cards at the beginning. And in terms of turn sequence, the first thing you do is decide who's going to go first, and that player would do 4 actions, then they would draw 2 player cards, then they would draw the infection cards, then the next person would go. At any given time, your hand limit is 6 cards. Whenever you draw cards where you're beyond the 6 maximum, you need to discard. To do the initial setup of the game, you need to draw 2 cards and give, I think it's 2 cards, and you infect the city with 3 cubes of the disease, and then 2 cards with 2 cubes, and then 2 cards with 1 cube. So we're going to start off with Toronto, and their color represents the infection cube. So there's going to be 3 cubes in Toronto. There's going to be 3 yellow cubes in Mexico City. And then the next 2, we'll just have 2. New Orleans will have 2. And Guadalajara will have 2. And then the next 2 will have 1. So we've got, sorry, this one's upside down. Boston has 1. And so does Montreal. Okay, Montreal has 1. So nothing red, no reds out there. So sure, why not? So I've got my generalist and my medic. The generalist will go first. We'll give the generalist 3 cards and the medic 3 cards. And hopefully there's no epidemic in here. Okay. Oh, I think in terms of who goes first, oh, we have an epidemic. So, so we drew an epidemic. Oh, I think actually, sorry, I made a mistake here. You're supposed to distribute the 3 cards before you hand out the epidemic. So, or before you shuffle the epidemic in. So let me take the top here and just do a quick shuffle. So hopefully that works out. Sorry about that. I forgot about that stuff. Otherwise, it'd be totally unfair. So I've got my 3 cards for both my players. You'll see that the generalist has actually a special card, which is an event card. This is not considered an action on your turn. So these are sort of abilities or bonuses that you can play when you need them. So this one is called Borrowed Time. You can play during your do action step. This is not considered an action, so it's not one of the 4 or 5 in the generalist case. The current player can do 2 additional actions this turn. So that's not too bad. So usually it's the person who has a city with the highest population goes first, and it looks like it is going to be the generalist since she has Toronto. So on her turn, she can do 1 of the 4 actions, and I feel like she really wants to start mitigating some of these outbreaks here. So I think what we'll do is we'll have, we will have her go and discard Toronto to fly to Toronto. That's her first action. So she's going to fly to Toronto. As her second action, she's going to cure 1 of the diseases here, or treat 1 of the diseases. Her third action will be treat another one. Her fourth action will move to Montreal. And she has 5 actions, so she's going to also treat this disease. So that ends the generalist's turn. She now draws 2 player cards. 1, 2, and there we go. So now we have the epidemic. We're going to advance the infection rate. We're going to draw from the bottom of the deck. And it is Indianapolis. Indianapolis is going to get 3 cubes. Okay, it goes in the discard pile. And then we're going to intensify. We're going to take the discard pile and we're going to shuffle the infection pile here. And we're going to place it on top of the infection deck. So now there's a very high chance, because those cards in this discard pile were already infected cities, there's a high chance of infecting them again and creating an outbreak. So let's just say if I pulled Indianapolis on my infection cards, and because it already has 3 cubes, I won't be adding 3 cubes. I'd be adding 1 cube of that disease to every linked city. So Dallas, Atlanta, and Chicago would get it. Now, and then I would increase my outbreak by 1. If Dallas had 3 cubes, I wouldn't be able to add it to Dallas. So let's just say Dallas had 3 cubes and I'm doing an outbreak from Indianapolis. Can't add it there. That becomes a second outbreak, and then I'd be infecting Phoenix and New Orleans. So it doesn't go back to the originating point, so I wouldn't be reinfecting Indianapolis and creating another outbreak. It's just a brand new location that hasn't had an outbreak yet. Okay, so I missed that. There we go. So there we go. So the card that the generalist drew gets discarded. She doesn't get a second card because of that. So she has her hand now with New Orleans, Atlanta, and now it's the medic's turn. So the medic has some work to do here. So as his first action, we are going to move to Indianapolis as my first action. As my second action, I can treat a disease. And when I do that, because he's a medic, I remove the cubes of one color, all the cubes. So I can treat in one action all those blue cubes. And let's see now. I am going to, that was my first action, second action, third action would be Dallas. But I do need, if I have one more red, I might be able to cure a red, and that would be useful. So I think I'll take my chances. I forgot to do something. Let me backtrack. We'll put the 3 back here. I forgot to draw the infection cards from the generalist turn. So, okay, here's a perfect example. Mexico City is supposed to get 3, and it can't. So we have now established an outbreak. So we put a yellow cube in each adjacent connected city, and we draw another infection card, which is Boston. And Boston, well, let's see, is, just so that I'm sure, is it 3 or is it just 1? Right, sorry, it's a 1 cube whenever there's an infection. So I'd put 1 cube in Boston because 3 would just be mean. So, but because Mexico City already had 3, I couldn't add a 4th, and that's why there was an outbreak, and we have moved up the outbreak marker. So now it is the medic's turn, and he'll do the same thing. First action, second action to cure. His third action, well, I think what we'll do is we'll move to Dallas, and we'll also do my 4th action, which is to cure that. We're in a little bit of trouble on this side, so hopefully it doesn't end quickly for us. So now he'll be drawing 2 cards, and he's got his other red card. And we are going to use his event card. His event card is One Quiet Night. You can play it anytime. It is not an action, but you just can't play it while you're resolving something else. So in the middle of drawing, I have to finish drawing my cards first. And we skip the draw infection card step this turn, only because I don't want to potentially infect Guadalajara and create another outbreak. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to discard this. We skip the infection card turn, and now it is the generalist to go. So the generalist is going to, I think we will, we'll take 1 action to move the Boston. We're going to second action to cure or to treat that disease. Third action, I think I'm going to discard New Orleans to fly there. So New Orleans, that's my 3rd action. And I think my 4th and 5th action will be to discard those. And that's it. Now, I think what I'm also going to do is, no, that's okay. I won't do that. Okay, so that ends the turn. We draw 2 player cards. 1, Indianapolis, and 2, Boston. Okay. So we're now going to draw infection cards. And the first one is Indianapolis, which gets 1, and New Orleans, which gets 1. Okay, so now it's the medic's turn. The medic fortunately has 4 red cards. So as my first action, I'm going to move to Atlanta. As my second action, I'm going to submit my 4 red cards because I'm at home base in Atlanta. I'm submitting these samples to find a cure for the red disease. So that was my second action. I still have 2 more actions to do, in which case I don't have any cards to play, so I can't fly anywhere, but I would really like to try to work this area here. So I'm going to move my last 2, 1, 2, and that's it. So now I draw 2 cards. 1, New York, and epidemic. Lucky me. Okay, so we're going to advance the infection rate marker. So now we're drawing 3 on the draw infection card turn. We're taking the bottom card. We're going to infect Calgary with 3 red cubes. Where are you, Calgary? Right here. 1, 2, and 3. And it goes in the discard. We are going to shuffle the cards in the infection and put them on top of the infection deck. I feel like I should have saved that event card now because it could be bad. And that we've done the intensify, so we discard this epidemic here. So now medic has to go to the draw infection cards. We're going to draw 3 because we are now at the infection rate of 3. So the first one is Indianapolis, replacing 1 blue cube. New Orleans is going to get 1, and Boston is going to get 1. So as you can see, there's a lot of, it helps if you had 4 players too, because I think in terms of scaling difficulty, the only difference is with more than 2 players, you get 2 cards each. So you have fewer options in terms of where you can fly to or how you can cure the diseases. But already you can see that, especially in this lower part of North America, I'm having a little bit of difficulty managing it. So there is hand management, there is area management or area control, trying to manage and get yourself to areas that are increasing in the number of disease cubes. And it can be a little challenging. So those are my 3. And now we pass on the turn to the generalist. And the generalist is going to try to mitigate some of these problems here. So she's going to do, her first action is to treat a disease here. She's going to move 1 for her second action, third action, fourth action to cure 1, and we're going to use borrowed time to have an additional 2. So that was her fourth action. Her fifth action is to move here, and 2 additional actions would be to treat these 2 diseases. And that ends her turn. So now she's going to draw 2 player cards, 1 and 2. So she has a hand size now of 5. Let me just, I don't know if you can see the cards, so I'm just going to move these up here a little bit. And we're going to draw our infection cards, 3 infection cards. So the first one is Calgary, and Calgary now has an outbreak. Because it has a maximum of 3 cubes, we move the outbreak tracker and we place 1 red cube in each adjacent connected city. And we continue drawing Mexico City right here and Montreal. All right, there we go. So now it's the medic's turn, and the medic only has New York. So he's going to try to... Oh, this will be tough. He's going to have to stay in this area. So 1, 2... Oh, actually, no. 1, cure, or treat. 2, 3, 4, because of his ability. And that's it. So now we're going to draw 2 cards. 1, 2. Okay. Huh. Okay. So he drew 2 cards, and now we do the infection. So we're going to draw Guadalajara, which gets 1. The second one is Toronto, and the third one is Santo Domingo. There we go. Okay, now it's the generalist's turn. And she is going to she's going to discard Los Angeles to fly to Los Angeles, I think. Or is it better just to take a charter flight? I think we'll take a charter flight. So first thing we'll do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That might work. No, we'll just leave it. Okay, so 1, 2. We move to Havana. We're going to discard Havana. And because we do that, we can, because we're in Havana and we're discarding our card that is Havana, that is a chartered flight to anywhere. So we're going to move straight to Calgary. So that was 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5 to treat 2 diseases there. And that ends her turn. So she's going to draw 2 cards. 1, which is remote treatment, and 2, which is Monterey. And we can play this at any time. So we're going to play this remote treatment. We can play this at any time. It's not considered an action. Discard it. We can discard 2 cubes of any kind from the board. So we're going to discard 1 from here and 1 from here. Back to the supply. All right. So now we're back. She's going to have to do the infection. So here we go. We draw 3. Monterey gets 1. And Atlanta is going to get 1. And San Fran is going to get 1 right there. These cards are a little slippery, so it's hard to keep them stacked. Okay. So now it's the medic's turn. The medic is going to move to Santo Domingo. 1, 2, treat 3, and discard Santo Domingo to do a charter flight as his 4th action. And where is he going to go? Let's go to let's go to wow, I'm not even sure. Chicago? No, Indianapolis. We're going to go to Indianapolis. No, actually, you know what? We're going to go to Chicago. We're going to go to Chicago. Yeah. So that was my charter flight to Chicago. And that was 1, 2, 3, 4. That was my 4th action. I draw 2 cards. Okay. 1, 2. Okay, that's not too bad. This is actually good for me. And I am going to do the infection. So 3 cards from infection. So first one, Chicago. Oops, Chicago. And then Havana. Where's Havana? Havana. And then Washington. Okay, so now it's the generalist's turn. The generalist can do 5 actions. She's going to try to get to Chicago. So she wants to get to Chicago. 1, 2. And as a action, she can share knowledge or take knowledge if you're in the same city. So they're both in the same city. And I can take the city card matching the city from a player in your city. So we're both in Chicago. The medic has Chicago. So as an action, she can take this card, which completes her 4 blue samples of the blue disease. So that was 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then 5. So that is her 5th action. So she cannot submit this disease yet. She can on her next turn, hopefully, but she is at her maximum card size hand. So we're going to have to start discarding some. So now she's done. So she's going to draw 2 cards. 1, 2. And I'm going to discard Minneapolis and Los Angeles from my hand. So I still have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we do the infection of 3 cards. Miami. And Miami gets 1. Phoenix. And Denver. Okay, if at any time your infection cards run out, you don't lose the game, you just reshuffle. So, okay, so she's done the infection, and now it's the medic's turn. The medic is going to well, we've cured the red, and the medic has an ability at any time remove all the cubes of cured diseases in your city for free. So let's just do a roundhouse here and let's go. 1, this automatically gets cleared. 2, 3, no, we'll go here. 3 and 4, because we've already cured the red disease, so that is a free action for him. So the medic is very, very useful in this game if you can position him right. So that ends his turn. He's going to draw 2 cards. 1, 2. And he has, at any time, you can airlift, you can move 1 pawn to any city. So I'm going to hold on to that. I might need that soon. We'll see. And what we're going to do is now draw the infection cards. So first one is Dallas. Second one is LA. And the third one is New York. All right. So now it's the generalist's turn. Generalist, perfect. As her first action, submitting all 4 blue samples that she has, and she has cured or discovered the cure for the blue disease. So we're good. And now that it's cured, as her second action, she can treat it, and because we've already cured this blue one, she can treat all of them. So that's her second action. Her third action will be, I think we're going to try to move to Miami. So third action, move to Miami. Fourth action, treat this disease. And I'm going to play this card from the medic. So even though it's out of turn, so she had the 1, 2, 3, 4th action. She has a 5th action left. The medic can play this card because he can play it at any time. It is not considered an action, and move 1 pawn to any city. I'm going to move the medic here. And because I've done that, as her 5th action, they're both in Miami. She can share knowledge or take knowledge, which is she can take this Miami card because they're in Miami and put it into her possession. So that ends her turn. We draw 2 player cards. And here we go. We have an epidemic. And the other card we draw is Seattle. So with the epidemic, we increase to the final infection rate of 4. We are going to draw from the bottom of the deck and infect it with 3 cubes. So Seattle has a rate of 3. And we're going to shuffle our discard pile of infection cards and place it on top of the infection deck. And then we're going to draw 4 cities of infection. So there's a very, very strong likelihood if I get Seattle again, or if I get... Actually, I think we're okay. We're not in too bad of a shape. I think we can potentially win it next round. It depends. If she had another yellow card, that would be helpful, but she doesn't, and that means it'll be up to the medic to see if he pulls a yellow card. Okay, and here we go. So 4 infection cards, cities to infect. Phoenix, Dallas, New York, Santo Domingo. Is that 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Okay. So 4 cities, no outbreak. We're still okay. Now it is the medic's turn. The medic is going to... Well, I think we're just going to have to try either stay in this area in the hopes of getting the card that I need to share knowledge with the generalist, or vice versa. So we'll take that chance, because I don't want to be so far that she's going to have to... Well, she does have Seattle, so there is a chance. So maybe if he can make his way to Seattle, then that might work. But I think right now we'll just stay in this area here. So we're going to take a direct flight, I think, to Washington. Sure, let's go to Washington. So he's going to fly there. And because we've already cured blue, he, as a free action, he already will cure all the disease cubes of that disease. So that's first, second, third, and fourth action. Okay, so he's going to stay in Chicago. Okay, that ends his turn. He's going to draw 2 cards. 1, 2. And here we go, Guadalajara. All right. Okay, so, oh, I wish I had saved that ability from the generalist. So the generalist is going to... Oh, we can't do it. We're close. We're really close in this round. So what we're going to do is... Darn. We need Guadalajara, and he needs to be in Guadalajara for me to share this knowledge. So this actually sucks. I actually don't think I can win this one. And let's see. I should have kept him close by. Oh well. So we're just going to go ahead and we will... Yeah, I don't think we can win. Because even if I get to Chicago, I can't share because I'm not in Guadalajara. And there's only 1 card left in the player pile, and the moment you run out of these cards, the game is over. So, I mean, when you're playing with new players and you're trying to teach the game, you could easily just reshuffle, but it doesn't make any sense because you're already at the maximum epidemic, and it won't take long before you are at an outbreak anyways. So, yeah. So, in this situation, there's no way for me to win because ideally the generalist would be the one to get this 4th and final yellow card to make her way back to Atlanta, submit it to cure that last disease. But looking at the board, I don't have an opportunity to, because the most important part is being able to share knowledge or take this card from the medic, but I can only do that if we were both in Guadalajara. So even if I were to go backwards and I had finished my move. Had I known I had Guadalajara, there's no way I would know. There's no way, because that came up after my final move. So there you go. Unfortunately, we could not cure the disease, and we'll call yellow COVID. It's going rampant throughout the city and throughout the world. And unfortunately, my team of the generalist and the medic were unable to find the cure and stop. But we got 2 out of 3. That's pretty good for this gameplay. So there you go. That is Pandemic Hot Zone, a smaller, slightly shorter, well, actually it's probably shorter, version of the full Pandemic board game. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a fun card management, area management, mitigating the outbreaks and mitigating disease cubes, trying to work together. There is a lot of cooperative gameplay in this, so if you like to be able to talk with your friends or work together as a team and strategize, there could easily be alpha personalities in this game for someone to just suddenly tell everyone what to do, but I think it's still open-ended enough that you try your best. There can be more than one way to approach a problem in this, depending on the cards that you have and who you want to be the hero to cure the disease. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, stay bored.